It's with great sadness that I make this video today. On Monday, our great friend, Michael Doherty, had a heart attack while he was running and he died. He was 52. He was a great guy and made a huge impact on my life and on many others. And I just felt as if I wanted to make a video and just remember him. Put down a little bit of a record, a little tribute to Michael. He leaves a lot of friends behind, a lot of people that he helped, and he was a really, really, really great guy. He died while jogging, and he loved it. He loved running. He'd had some trouble with his heart last year, and this time it proved to be fatal. Really shocking news. It was been on my mind the last few days, and I just felt as if I should make this video anyway. Michael Doherty was one of the most potent, powerful crusaders for justice I've ever met. He was an unstoppable force, and he was so impressive. He went deep, deep, deep into the system, pushing back against police corruption, court corruption. He went after them all, the police, the judges, the courts, and he exposed the levels of corruption within the system and, pioneered a path for other people to follow using private prosecutions. And his work should be remembered, and what he did, for the people of this country, was a great sacrifice to himself, personal and professional. But he never gave up. He never ever gave up, even after many setbacks. And he was up against the entire system with one man. I met Michael in 2013. He was a British Airways engineer in a nice, cushy job, working for British Airways. And, he came through the whole engineering background. And then he had a run-in with Hillingdon police. Something happening with his daughter. It was a grooming thing that he exposed, and he reported it to the police, and the police paid no attention to his report. He made a complaint, and the next thing you know, police were sent round to his house, detectives, broke into his house without a warrant, all on camera, arrested them. Just outrageous abuse of power by the Metropolitan Police. And they just expected Michael to roll over and take it, prosecuted them with assault against the police, and he wasn't going to have it. And he spent years crusading for justice against the police, against the corruption in the Metropolitan Police. And he pioneered a whole avenue of private prosecutions. It was him that brought it to my attention and to everyone else's attention. And he was just dogged, absolutely dogged in his pursuit. And it was so, I respected him so much for it. But I first met him in 2013. We were obviously all intoxicated with discovering the common law, trusts and statute law, and what our rights were, and how we could push back against these supposed servants of the state and their abuse of power against we the system, we the people. And we were all pushing in different directions. There was groups of us all working together, whether it was pushing back against mortgage law, whether it was pushing back against bankers, bailiffs, police, a lot. We were all having a good crack at it. And we had these meetings in Liverpool called Albion, caused a bit of controversy at the time, but they were really powerful, potent meetings, and people from all over the country would turn up and all speak, and everyone would get up and do their thing. And that's when I first met Michael. And at that time, Michael was crusading for his own struggle. And the thing about Michael is that he always looked sharp. He always wore a suit. He always looked like he meant business, and he was a businessman. He spoke properly, and really, really charismatic guy. He could charm the birds from the trees. He was always like a really high energy guy. It was whenever you were in Michael's company, you knew about it. He, was a fantastic speaker. His grip of the detail and the way he could articulate the story, and he had a bit of an accent, like it was like a bit like a South London accent. He had a bit of street to his accent, but he was an Irish warrior. He had Irish blood but an English heart, as Morrissey would say. And that's kind of how I remember Michael, as someone who was I was really impressed by and respected. And I respected. He came up to Liverpool, and it was just such a great period, 2013, 2014, and um, he took a lot of a stick, for coming up to Liverpool and doing those talks, because people didn't really understand what was going on there. It was just a really good period. Anyway, he carried on, his battle, and I went off in a different direction. I didn't speak to him for a few years. And then we kind of crossed paths again, because we've got a lot of mutual friends. Danny Bamping, his best friend, and Danny's heartbroken. They were really, really tight. And Monaco Jim, and a few others, we all kind of mixed in the same circles. And Michael came back into, my circle. And, it was about 3 years ago, I decided I wanted to do podcasting and interview people. I thought, who am I going to do first? Who am I going to do first? And I asked Michael, I said, look, do you fancy helping me out? I want to do podcasting, but I don't know where to start. Would you do an interview with me? He said, yeah, of course. I said, look, it just might be a little bit of a practice. If you're up for that, no problem. Yeah. And we did an audio podcast. And if you know Michael, you know what he talks about. He talks about his case. And he spent 2 hours telling me about the case. He told me about the case a few times before. So I knew the story. I knew it quite well, but that didn't stop him. And it didn't stop him having another go articulating his situation. And his grip of the detail was so impressive. He really, really understood that case. This was years after the event. This was years of him fighting through the courts. This was years of him testing every judge in the country, every court in the country, politicians, lords, police, the lot. There was no end to where he would push for justice, because he wanted to clear his name. And he did the podcast with me, and I was really grateful to him. But unfortunately, I messed up the audio. That was my first podcast, and it was unusable. And I said, Michael, I can't use it. And he went, oh, no problem. And I said, look, let's do another one. And I'm gutted it never happened. It became really close. Maybe 6 months ago, I invited him to Liverpool to come and do a face-to-face podcast with me. He was living in Poland at the time. He was going to fly over, get on the plane, get off the plane, do a podcast with me, get plane back and go back to Poland. And it came really close, and it didn't happen. And I'm gutted. I'm really gutted that it didn't happen. And yeah, one of those things. He was a great guy. But yeah. So what Michael did is Michael showed that there are lots of tools available to us as British people. It's our birthright, the common law. All of our rights and protections are in the bedrock of the country, and they can't get rid of them no matter how hard they try. Right? They have to, expose themselves as tyrants whenever they try to stop the people from exercising their birthright. And one of those ancient tools is the private prosecution. And the private prosecution is where private citizens can actually bring the prosecution themselves, bring them before a judge. The judge hears the evidence, issues summons, and those people who are accused on the information sheet have to come and answer the charges. And it's an ancient right. It's an ancient right that the people have to bring in. We just think that because of custom or recent tradition that the police and the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service, are the only ones that can bring private prosecution, which is not true. We individual citizens can do it ourselves. If the police fail to do their job in investigating a crime and bringing, evidence before the CPS, you can do it yourself. And Michael proved this. Michael was a pioneer of private prosecutions for citizens in the UK, and he came really, really, really close and blowing it all open. But they had to stop it, and what he showed is that what happens is when you bring a private prosecution as a private citizen against protected persons, yeah, whether that's Matt Hancock, yeah, or other people like that, what he showed is that the CPS at some point, even if you're correct, even if the evidence that you're laying is correct, even if this person has shown that he needs to face trial and answer the allegations that the evidence is presented, is that the CPS, Crown Prosecution Service, would step in, take the case from the private citizen, and then close it down. Right? And what Michael argued was that this is a breach of our fundamental rights, is that the CPS shouldn't be allowed to close down the case because they took possession of it. And he pushed and pushed and pushed, and it went before the Supreme Court. It wasn't his case, it was another case, but it was all part of a raft of people bringing private prosecution, putting immense pressure under the system to answer this, because this was like a remedy for the people to bring actions against these abuses of power by civil servants and people, who are a protected class. And it wasn't just Michael's case. There was a lot of others who were inspired by him to bring their own private prosecutions. I brought my own against a mortgage banker in Liverpool Magistrates Court. I laid in information, got a hearing before a judge, but they refused my application, not based on any valid reason. They should have allowed it, but when I went into court, there was like 4 plainclothes policemen in the court, and I did a FOI after that on Michael's advice. He helped me put the documents together, and after the hearing, that we did an FOI, a freedom of information request, to ask were there plainclothes police officers in the court and why were we using public funds to, I was just bringing, an allegation with evidence against a mortgage banker. Anyway, so we've got I'm thankful for Michael Doherty for educating me about private prosecutions and everyone else that he helped, because he helped countless people, fight for their rights. And he was a hugely impressive figure. High energy, great guy. He's going to be sorely, sorely missed and taken from us too soon at 52. It's too young. He still had a lot more to give. I know from the last time I spoke to him, which was about a month ago, he was gearing up for another go at it. He was going to come at it from a different angle, and he was recharging his batteries. He was living in Spain with his kids and his wife, who were just going to be heartbroken. They've lost their dad. The deepest condolences go out to Michael's wife and kids. He was a memorable character, and I just wanted to do a brief tribute to him. And I hope he's looking down and he's found peace and the justice that he deserved. The fight goes on, the struggle goes on, but it's people like him that laid the path for us to be able to follow. So I tip my hat to Michael Doherty. Major respect. His funeral is on Friday in Alicante in Spain. I'm sure there's tributes going on Facebook, on Twitter.